All right, so last week I talked about, let's call it the interesting way that we met. It was at Social Media Marketing World 2019 it was March. And it was actually after the event was over because one of our mutual friends is Molly Mahoney, the tremendous Facebook superstar and glam queen of all things branding and bots and everything else. So
on live. That's right. Go live and monetize. That's her tagline.
Oh my God. That woman monetizes her breath. Every breath is monetized. But anyway, she was having an informal get together of people who are acquainted with her. And, it was an opportunity to meet her in person because we've talked quite a bit. She's been on the podcast a couple of times, but I didn't really have a lot of face-to-face with her. So I went to this informal meetup, and who's there? Jerry Ann Wiesbrook and a whole bunch of other people. And within 5 minutes, she is busting my chops. And I personally love people who challenge me because I don't get better if I think I'm all that, I'm not going to get better.
Right. That's true for everyone though, right?
It's very true. But within seconds, and I had literally just started the Nonfiction Brandversity Facebook group 2 months prior to this, maybe 3. And she was all over me about what I'm not doing when it comes to Facebook groups and all that stuff. And I knew within seconds that, okay, I like her. I like her energy. I like her passion. And most of all, I like the fact that you were very open in sharing what you knew if I was interested in learning from it. And I certainly am. So my first thing, which I think a lot of listeners should be aware of, is the sheer power for building your personal brand via Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Again, if you listen to last week's episode, you know that the Military Mama Network group was started in 2013. It now has close to 20,000 active members in the main group. And you say that you got close to 100 subgroups?
I know we have over 100 subgroups. So we do groups, and this is something I think everyone can and maybe should do. We have groups that are topical. And so for us, right, we've got spouses. We have a book exchange. It's not all serious, but we have a fitness one. We have stress because stress is certainly exacerbated when you love someone who serves and it's other stuff like that. But we also have local groups because we have a local presence in all 50 states. And so we want to have Facebook groups where they can really shout from the rooftop what's going on in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and not necessarily clog up the main group because there are some groups that have a lot going on. We have a group in San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth. Those are really military communities. They have a lot of stuff going on for active duty veterans and families. And so I want them to have an opportunity to kind of create their own community that's really empowered, but still lives with our culture, right? Be kind. The OPSEC thing is operational security is a little looser, but still within the Department of Defense standards. And so we just, as the need grows, we consider the groups. There's a group that we've been dreaming of for years. We want to have a grief group, DP, because we get so many families that have lost. First of all, there's a grief, right? Your kid goes to college, your kid gets married, moves out, whatever. As a parent, there's a grief for that. It's not that you're not excited for them, right? Or that you don't love where their life is going, but there's this emptiness where they were in your life, in the day-to-day of your life. And so the grief of your kid joining is it's hard to explain because I remember when my son went in and I cried. I cried for 9.5 weeks of the 10 weeks he was in training. People are like, well, aren't you proud? I'm like, it's not mutually exclusive. I was talking to him. He's my current events guy, and we talk about music and we talk about movies. And even this past Christmas, he came home, we stayed up half the night watching movies and talking. That's not there on the regular like it used to be. And there's a level of grief for that. So we want to create this group, right, where people can grieve and grieve in a healthy way. But we haven't found the people to put in leadership so that we can create that group. And so we've got that kind of stuff going on. So we have 100 groups, but we probably would have 150 if we said yes to everybody who asked.
Wow.
I think most people, if as you become a more visible brand, right, you become a more visible presence, you can't meet all of the needs in one area, right? In your house, you have a kitchen that you cook and eat in, and you've got a living room that you do other things in, and a bedroom that you sleep in. And if you start thinking about Facebook as a platform, as a home and a gathering space, then when you see very clear purposes being created and being gravitated towards, it's really easy to be hey, let's move that here. so that more of your needs can be met in a really meaningful way. And then do the umbrella and talk about it. Like every month every week, we highlight a different group. Like, hey, did you know that we have this? And then like we watch the numbers climb in those groups, but it's just because people don't know until you tell them 1,000 times. Like we were talking about last week, like say it until you want to puke and then say it 10 more times because people are busy and they don't hear. And we have the attention span of a goldfish.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by Nonfiction Brandversity. It's a free Facebook group dedicated to the art and craft of personal branding, and we'd like to invite you. Just search Nonfiction Brandversity on Facebook and ask to join. You're in, guaranteed. I can't wait to see you on campus. Well, there's the old advertising truism. The second you're tired of your advertising, great. Now your audience is starting to see it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, literally, it's the company that does a campaign for a year and then wants to change it the second year just because I'm so sick of that slogan. It's like, are you kidding? It's only finally getting penetration in the marketplace so that people will associate that slogan, that tagline, that marketing message with your brand. So you're talking branding right there, which is one, know who you are and constantly through different ways demonstrate who you are, what you do, and how you do it, even when you're tired of saying it. Yeah. Don't ever assume anybody knows who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Unless you get to the level of someone like Tony Robbins. But even then, people are like...
Everyone doesn't... Oprah, maybe.
Yeah, Oprah. Yeah, people know who Oprah is. But Tony Robbins, well, I guess he gives speeches, right? You're exactly right when you talk about you needing to continually reinforce who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Not only so people understand you, but also, especially when you have a group, that they adhere to that ethos when it comes to the way stuff works. Because you talk about operational security, there's a reason why you can't be proudly saying, hey, my soldier is being deployed over to XYZ base in wherever. Yeah. Why? Because that's telling the military troop movements of an entire unit to a place that maybe doesn't need to know that quite yet.
Right. Or ever.
Yeah.
And I think, I just think it's so important. People don't embrace it. And it's not fun. Listen, I mean, anybody who's been a parent who's had to say, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. I've got a 12-year-old grandson. I'm still like, go wash your hands. You get tired of it. You get tired of hearing your own voice. But I mean, here's like a true story. We were talking about last week about, the commercial that Facebook created and ran for us. They saturated the market and they spent a lot of money doing it. A staggering amount of money, because I've got a friend in the industry who checks the numbers, or like there's some black web back there that tells like how many it's shown and who liked it and how much money they spent on ad spend alone. And still there are people I'm like, well, you might have seen the commercial over the holidays, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, I didn't. That was saturated and people haven't seen it. So don't think, and none of us have the money that Facebook has to saturate the market on anything. And if you're tired of saying it like XYZ, then say YZX, but get your message across. But before that, like back the truck up, you have to know what your message is. You have to know what your vision is. And you have to be very, very, I think, etched in cement. We support our troops, veterans, and their families. We don't support their dogs. We don't support we know people who do, and we send them there, right? We aren't an employment or dating service. We may partner with an employment or dating service, but for us, we support our troops, veterans, and their families. And you know what our first standard is? Be kind. They shouldn't be earth-shattering, but it is. And for people who are listening to this and they're like, well, blah, blah, brand. Listen, if you can't say your thing like that, fire it off. Then keep working until you can and be very, very, very clear. Quit changing it. I've been saying the same thing for 7 years, 6.5 years. We support our troops, veterans, and their families. We support our troops, veterans, and their families. And say it until you're not stuttering, because I want you all to just stop and listen. Someone needs you and they're not finding you because your messaging isn't clear. Someone is needing what you're selling, what you're giving, how you're serving people and supporting people. And they have a gaping hole where your name and your business needs to be. And unless and until you can be clear on your vision and how you enact that, what your mission is, your skin in the game, they're not going to find you.
Get that tattooed on your forearm. Oh my God, you just, in a very short paragraph, said exactly what I have believed and I preach all day long. Probably you said it in a better way. You have got to take who you are, what you do, and how you do it, and distill it down into a phrase that you can repeat in your sleep that is 100% true to who you are. Because right now, we've got a lot of people who are experts in certain technology niches.
But they say they are they?
Exactly. They say they are, but are they truly? Let's just pick on one that I love to pick on all the time, which is search engine optimization. Yeah, it's absolutely necessary, the same way that tying your shoes and brushing your teeth is, but it's not a primary first level concept. It's not like service. You say your big verb is service.
Yeah.
My big verb is storytelling and branding. Those are my kind of twin verbs because I think they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Brands tell their story by demonstrating that story over and over and over again. If you are an expert in TikTok right now, you won't be 3 years from now. If you are an expert in whatever Facebook is doing today, it's going to change probably in the next 30 days.
Or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they're rolling out a big update.
Exactly. So, and who really knows? Even the insiders don't truly know the depth of that. And again, that'll change when certain things work and certain things don't and whatever. So if you're about that, can you be the number one expert on Facebook? Yeah, to a certain extent. There are people who clearly have made that their flag.
Well, I'm going to put a pin right there, DP. I feel like we talked about this last year. Listen, I can say I'm an expert at fixing cars because I know that sounds funky because my husband's a mechanic. I'm not an expert. And when you regurgitate third-party information instead of your first-party experience, you're not an expert.
Oh,
you
amen.
can be the loudest one in the room, but you're not the expert. And I think, like, to your point, you need to ask really pointed questions of people to find out if they're really experts, because people throw money at someone who's loud in the room and they're not experts and they don't know, or they knew a year ago, or they're regurgitating. My favorite thing to like on is The Verge. Like The Verge quotes Facebook and someone quotes The Verge. Go to Facebook and find out their stuff.
Right.
It infuriates me because how many people have been taken advantage of and like sacrifice their money and their time to buy into a program that was an expert, that was air quotes, and they're not experts. And the other thing I think is like, choose your platform, choose your service portal, and make it happen. I tolerate Twitter, tolerate it less than I did a few years ago, but I tolerate Twitter. I go there for one specific purpose because I know corporations listen there. But if I want to partner with corporations, I'm on LinkedIn, right? Know your platform and know how you're going to meet the people who need you the most, and then know who you are so that you can serve them best, period. What do you think of Donald Miller's story branding stuff?
That's a good question. And I'll be honest, I've avoided it because I don't want to know about it in depth because, again, we're kind of playing in the same area. And so I'm very concerned about what you exactly just said, which is I don't want to be a regurgitator of someone else. I want to be my own person. My whole nonfiction brand platform and what I do with that comes from 27 years experience working in advertising and marketing and understanding from my second year as a copywriter working on Coca-Cola that the value of a brand is that Coca-Cola's version of sweet brown bubbly water is more premium than Pepsi's brand of sweet brown water. They're the same damn thing and yet totally different. So much so that people, when a server comes up in a restaurant and says, "Can I get you something to drink?" and the person says, "Yeah, I'd like a Coke." And they say, "I'm sorry, we only have Pepsi products." That person may say, "Oh, thanks, I'll just have water."
My sister.
Exactly. Why? Because they are brand aligned, not only with the flavor profile of the soft drink, but everything. They can't, if I sat down with them for 15 minutes, I could tease out a bunch of information about their experiences with Coke and like, well, Grandpa always had Coke when we would go visit when I was a kid. And I loved sitting on Grandpa's lap and he'd tell me stories and we'd share a Coca-Cola. And it's not about the water. It's not about the bubbly. It's not about the sweet. It's not about the brown. It's about the association with that brand.
What do you think about blind taste tests?
Let's not even talk about the Pepsi challenge of the what was that, 1983 or whatever that was. I actually use that in a lot of my presentations as an example because Coke violated its brand when it came out with New Coke.
That was horrible.
Well, and guess what the market did? It forced them to go back to what the marketplace understood was their brand, the true, real thing that is Coke. So much so that when I was a young copywriter, I would have my posterior handed to me if every ad I created did not cover the words authenticity, refreshment, and sociability, not using the words, but demonstrating what that meant. Every ad, if it covered two of those three bases, it was dead. If it covered all those bases, then it would go up to the next level of approval. And by the way, at Coca-Cola, there were 7 levels of approval for every piece of marketing communication when I worked on it, 20 plus years ago.
I wonder what the 7th level did.
They just had to know it was airing, or it was running and go, okay.
So I deal with this with Military Mama Network because, we've got local groups. And so we've got local leaders who like to do, oh my gosh, it makes me insane. Like we'll take our dog tag logo and put it on like a VW bug. And I'm like, no. Or hang it from a bear's claw. And I'm like, nope. And literally I had to come out with a branding expectation package. And now I'm like, oh, that's why they do it. That's why people have those conversations. But at levels 1, 2, and 3, they were like, oh, this is so cute. It's so fun. I'm like, it's so not us. Like, it's not us. This is not us. We are not a teddy bear and we are not a VW bug. Like, we are very clean graphics. We are very get to the point. Like, it might shock you that our group would reflect that. But you know what I mean? Like, and people don't understand. And I think that I would really love to know what like levels 2 through 7 did. Because I've watched it with us where it'll get through a lot of people before I'm like, no. And like one lady did this thing that was completely on point, but the logo was skewed, right? She'd stretched it.
Right.
And the proportions were off. And I'm like, this is fantastic. Can you fix that logo? No one else had noticed it. I'm like, it like screamed off the page at me.
Right.
The words were fine. That screamed off the page at me. So I couldn't even pay attention to what the words said as much as that logo not being right.
Well, you just demonstrated the need for a creative director because that's
really?
what creative directors at ad agencies assess and encourage and coach and ultimately are the ones to say, yeah, that flies or that dies before it gets to the client. And let me give you an example. I gave a presentation earlier this week at the UW-Wisconsin-Madison, and there was a graphic in the department I was in that showed the state of Wisconsin in outline, and it had a couple of words in it. So it was this designed graphic that said something. Well, here's the thing. Wisconsin, the state, has a pretty recognizable shape.
Yeah.
This person flopped it, meaning that they reversed it. And I know why they did it because the designer said, well, the type will fit in the state better if I flop it. How can you do that? The brand of the state of Wisconsin, one of the brand elements of it is the shape of the actual geographic boundaries of the state.
Well, of course it is.
How can you do that? It's just unbelievable.
It's like making the mitten, not the mitten.
Exactly. Well, exactly.
The glove, it'll work better.
Well, exactly. In Michigan, the mitten, if you leave out the UP, the Upper Peninsula, then you've got a whole lot of people mad at you because it's like, oh, you didn't show the entire state. What are you talking about? But it's that level of brand coherence and consistency that is absolutely necessary, even for your personal brand. We just watched the Oscars, and right there in the front row was Tom Hanks, one of the biggest personal brands in Hollywood. And I don't care what you think about him as an actor or what his movies are, but he is consistent as a brand, still married to the same woman after decades. The movies he does are always in a certain, he'll flex a little bit, but he never goes to the dark side. No. And that's why he's a classic Hollywood star, whereas other people are, like Johnny Depp. What's he doing this week? Does he have a bone coming through his nose? He's all over the place. But that's kind of his brand, which is I'm your wacky old guy now. Hey, nonfiction branders, did you know I wrote a book? Well, I did, and it's called Rotoma, the ROI of Social Media Top of Mind. I wrote it with my colleague Spencer X. Smith, and it's all about Rotoma, an acronym that means Return on Top of Mind Awareness. Best-selling author and NYU Stern School of Business professor Scott Galloway called it a book that starches the fluff from social media and helps managers allocate capital and find the unicorn among unicorns, ROI. And Chief Content Officer at Marketing Profs, Ann Handley said, "This isn't just a practical way to think about the return on social media, it's also a spot-on, accurate way to reframe your social efforts." Check out all the 5-star reviews on Amazon by searching Rotoma, ROTOMA. Pick up your copy today and start building your personal, professional, and small business brand the Rotoma way. Brand consistency, exactly. I loved what you said before about even if it makes you vomit to say it, you gotta keep your story, your message, your brand out there, and you have to enforce it. So it sounds like you've got enforcement on several levels. You've got the creative, usage of logo and stuff like that. But you mentioned that you've got someone who's on the liability side. Would you call it that?
Yeah, we're a military group, but I think everybody kind of has to think about this. Like, where can I take a hit that would kill me? If your brand is about personal authenticity, and then people find out that you stole materials, that you're dead in the water, right? And like you were saying with I don't want to, unintentionally plagiarize or be influenced by somebody that works in the same space as me. Like I want my own voice, that matters. And one of my things is like, do you know who is? My thing is, girls, stop stealing other people's materials and put it in your book as your own. 80% of her stuff is plagiarized. 8%, they did a study on it. She's still selling like crazy, but don't talk to me about authenticity if that's what you're doing. Don't talk to me about honesty and integrity if that's what you're doing. And had she been called out on it, which she was, and then she was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. But no, she's stonewalled. And I have a big thing with that. But what's your thing? Like the personal branding thing, like Tom Hanks. And my immediate thing was, oh, he's such a nice guy. I don't know him. He could be a complete nerd. But he's consistently reported as and acts as and comes across as like a truly nice guy, Yeah,
his kind of a understanding of his brand is he's the nicest guy in Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's not exactly a bad thing to be, especially in a divided country where, just being able to go to the movies with a family could potentially cheese some people off.
Yeah. The Military Mama Network's been around for 6.5 years, and it's been branded like the way it is right now for 4.5 years, but it's been loosely branded. We've tightened it up for the whole time. But a couple of years ago, I guess like 18 months ago, I started this consulting business called Hey G. Well, people are like, why Hey G? I'm like, because people who know me that are in my inner circle, one, that's what they call me. And two, like it's always hey is the beginning. Because even when I'm doing, I'm like, hey, you guys, hey, friends. I don't know if it's a Midwest thing, but it's always like my leading. And so that's what I named it. And it's red because I love red and all of that. But one of the biggest platforms for it is to really like inspire every day. Like I'm talking about like how to create mission, how to clarify your vision, how to, what your action steps are and strategy and content creating and community development. But before that, you were inspired by something, or you'd be sitting home watching bad football or movie reruns. And to speak into that inspiration every day. When people talk about branding, I think like we were talking about last week, like it's not about the golden arches, Right. It's not about the blue ball with the lines going through it, It's about what they represent. And when we're talking about and building a brand, one, we have to be willing to say it over and over and over again. We have to be willing to say it to what feels like an empty room.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to say it in ways that other people can hear. Because, like Gary Vee, do you know Gary Vee?
Oh, yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk.
I love him, but probably 50% of the time he says something that I said 2 days ago. Now, I don't have the scale that he does. There's a lot of people that don't listen to him because he drops the F-bomb all the time and he looks like he needs a shave. And I'm like, I don't really care about that, but the people I go to church with care about it, and like to realize that when you're doing that, that's part of your brand too. Or there's a guy here in Illinois who's like uber Republican. And he and has been for years, but he will take pot shots at Democrat anything just so that people know, like, hey, don't come to me if you're a Democrat because I won't even work with you.
Yeah.
And like, literally, you want to repel Democrats? Like, apolitical. He's like a realtor or a car dealer. It has nothing to do. He's like, I just want to work with Republicans. I'm like, okay, then. Now I know I'll never send a Democrat to you. You know, like you have to be that clear. You have to be that clear all the time or you're going to lose people.
Yeah. And it just comes back to the basics of branding. And I want to quickly address, you referred to the fact that your current branding you developed in the, fairly recently and stuff like that. I'm going to quibble on the word choice there strictly because if you're talking about changing your colors or your logo or your type or even some of your messaging, you're changing packaging, but your branding was set in 2013 when you and a bunch of other people got together to do something that was all about what?
We support our troops, veterans, and their families.
There you go. That is your brand. Your logo might flex. Your typography might flex. Your messaging or current slogan might flex. But that core idea, that foundational seed crystal, is that ever going to change?
No.
That is the basis of your brand. And that's why I believe everybody needs to do the hard work, which you alluded to earlier, of sitting down with a pen, pencil, and paper, your choice of writing implement, and actually write down that phrase that you can have tattooed on your wrist.
Yeah.
So that if someone says, what are you really about? I can say, I'm a creative collaborator who helps people discover, craft, and communicate their nonfiction brand story and communicate it via the most efficient channels possible.
Wow.
That's me, period, the end. You don't want that? Don't come to me because I'm not an expert in SEO. I'm not an expert in Facebook ads. I'm not an expert in blah, 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 blah. I'm an expert in what I just said.
And I think developing, so like, I'm developing this consulting brand and I know pieces of it, but I know it's still in development, right? Like I haven't got that thing down where I can just say like, this is what I do. I help people create community, right? I help them clarify their vision and their mission so that they can create content strategy. But that doesn't like resonate. Like we support our troops, veterans, and their families. So I know it's still in play.
Yeah.
And I've watched other people swing wildly about in the desert of who am I and what am I doing while they're trying to figure out who they are. But I think, tell me what you think of this. This is like the most genteel conversation we've ever had, DP.
My God.
I think that you start with this like really broad thing. Like for us, we just wanted to survive basic training, right? And then we wanted to help our kids. And it took a long time to get down to that, we support our troops, veterans, and their families. And we have more that goes to it, but that's a good place to put a period. It can also be a comma, because we believe that if you serve our country, that you deserve our country's very best. And if our country bureaucracy can't provide it, then we're going to do everything we can to get that to you, right, to solve that problem. But it wasn't all of that. It layered and it came out over time. And I think for people who are developing their brand and they're worried about, as you said, typography and colors, slow your roll. Get that paper and pen out or get a crayon out. Like, who cares? I work in Post-it notes. You have to be really clear. And if you're not super clear, at least know what ring you're walking into, right? I'm not helping people with Twitter. I'm helping people with community. I'm not helping people with SEO. I'm helping people with vision and mission. We're not helping people who are cops, although we love our, first responders. We're helping people who have people who serve or did serve. And to don't go from like A to 1 to orange to bananas, right? Stick with the alphabet until you know that what your brand is, what your vision and your mission is, that like resonates. Because if it doesn't resonate with you, it's never going to resonate with anybody else. It frustrates me, DP. I work with a lot of really high level people. And recently I was working with a countywide, actually it's an internationally known agency, but I was working with the presence of it. And they were telling me something that they did. And I'm like, so did you, what stories did you tell her on that? And they're like, well, we dropped a data point. And I'm like, no one cares about that. I sold 50,000 cars. No one, literally the only person that cares about that is your sales manager. If you're talking about, hey, we help marry single moms with reliable vehicles so that their kids are safe and they don't have to worry about putting money into a clunker, Or we bring you home. We work with you to fix your credit and to find affordable housing in the school districts that you long to be in. Or we help you build the vacation of your dream that you've spent a lifetime working for. No one cares. Well, maybe they do right now. What cruise line it is. They care about the dream. They care about the story. And you can't do that unless you're really, really, really clear.
That's right. Companies want to sell features, but people buy benefits. What is the benefit? If Disney World said nothing but we have this many water slides and this many restaurants and this many venues, this many shows, data points, like you talked about, okay, you'd be competing with other companies that have facilities with a bunch of those things.
Yeah.
No one goes to Disney World for the number of rides. They go it for the lifetime memory that the entire family will have.
Because it's the happiest place on earth.
It's the happiest place on earth. And you'll notice it doesn't say the most thrilling, the sexiest, the loudest. No, it's the
shortest lines.
Yeah, those lines are not short. That's for sure. What a great conversation with Jerry-Ann Wiesbrook of Military Mama Network, a Facebook group that really check it out, especially if you have anyone who serves in the military or is sacrificing at home as their family member serves in the military.
Or did serve. We love our veterans.
I'm DP Knudten for the Nonfiction Brand Podcast and Nonfiction Brandversity, the free Facebook group that I am not doing anywhere near as well as Jerry-Ann is doing with the Military Mama Network. But you can join. All you have to do is ask to join, answer 3 questions to prove you're not a bot, and you are in. And she is
Jerry-Ann Wiesbrook from Military Mama Network.
That's it for this week's episode of the Nonfiction Brand Podcast. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.